Hi everyone, thank you for joining us today to talk about, just remove a bit of, okay, I think it might not be presenting showing the screen, but we'll try again. Hold on, hopefully that's working. Anyway, hi everyone, thank you for joining us today to talk about supply chain security and hopefully cover off some ways that your information security management system, your ISMS, can protect you, your clients, your customers, and everyone else in the supply chains that you coexist in, ensuring that you are not the weakest link in the chain. My name is James Keenan. I am the Information Security Business Unit Manager here at NQA, and with me today I have David Nutbrown, NQA's Principal Auditor for ISO 27001. First, a little bit about NQA for anyone that doesn't know us. NQA are a leading certification body with presence around the world, having successfully certified businesses in all the territories you can see listed on the map just now. We are consistently in the top 3 certification bodies for a wide range of standards right across the globe. Just some of the standards and industries that we certify in are on screen now, and we also provide training courses in those areas as well, tailored at all the levels you would need, from e-learning introductions to tutor-led lead auditor courses in locations across the UK and Ireland. Now, the reason we're here today, supply chains, and particularly making sure they are secure no matter where you are within that chain. Attackers always try different ways to get access to the data they want, and the easier and quicker they can do that, the better for them. They know that attempting to directly get to the main prize is going to be difficult. The amount of money that the biggest companies spend on security is huge, with security teams full of people monitoring very expensive tools 24/7. So, where are they vulnerable? I'll use an analogy by borrowing from any heist movie you've ever seen. In order to get into that vault, everything supplying it will be explored as a particular area to exploit. The vault is sealed but needs an air supply. How about the air conditioning duct plans? The building has people in it. What about the sewers that service the toilets those people use? Or even next door to the vault, can we get into that building and then move laterally to get what we want? It's how the Hatton Garden heist was completed. A quiet bank holiday with less people around, access gained to an adjacent property, right into a lift shaft, and then drill into the vault next door. This sort of methodology is what attackers are increasingly using to get the data they really want. For some time now, we have seen attackers attempting to access the data they want by systematically looking for that weakness that they can exploit, that is the first step to their ultimate goal. We are all in a supply chain. We either purchase goods and services or we provide them. We are links in that chain. In some cases, a number of links in a number of very complicated chains. And to use another analogy, or maybe even mix my metaphors, it's like buying a house. When the person that is buying the house from the person that is buying your house has an issue and can't secure the money, it's going to cause you problems. And I'm sure at least one person on the call today has experienced that stress. And being as we are recording this on a Friday, you may well even be experiencing that right now. You are all just one banana skin away from all falling down. Okay. What is a supply chain attack? As a supplier to a company, you may have trusted access to systems belonging to that company, and an attacker could gain access via your trusted access to the target. This is the simplest form, and don't forget, we don't need to talk solely technical here. Social engineering and insider threat is just as dangerous in this scenario. Another example. An attacker may identify websites where you, as a supplier to a particular industry, are likely to visit. Just like the way we all know builders go to the builders merchants for materials. They then infiltrate that website to deliver specific malware to you via the website, which can then be used on the ultimate target through you. This is a variation of a vector known as a watering hole attack, the name of which really does help to illustrate how it can be so effective. The good news is there are things we can all do to secure our supply chains. And David will be covering the ways that an ISMS can help provide the framework for you to protect them shortly. But step one, as ever, is the knowledge gathering and understanding phase. Supply chains can be complex. Understand the value and sensitivity of your contracts. Are you securing them appropriately? Know your suppliers, and not just the first layer of that supply. How many subcontracts are there? Does everyone follow the contracted obligations? If you have contractual conditions set, ensure that they flow down appropriately. Do your suppliers actually meet their security obligations as you expect them to? Does everyone understand the common threats that they face and how to mitigate against them? The flip side of this is making sure that as a supplier, you understand what your obligations are to those that you supply. As ever, it's important to know what you're up against. Alongside the threats everyone faces, there will be business vertical specific threats and attacks. Do you and everyone that supplies you know what they are? Step two is about knowing who you can trust and who you can't. Have a trusted supplier list based on specific measures and criteria, and make sure you are always on that good list. From a business continuity point, you can use this list to identify over-reliance on single suppliers and attempt to build in some redundancy should you need it. Step three, communication. This is where the dreaded security questionnaires play their part. Explain what you expect of your suppliers, and if you're a supplier, make sure you ask your client what is expected of you in a security sense. Those long forms can take an age to fill out, but they are important. Make sure if you're abiding by them, that you have appropriate flow down conditions in your contracts with your sub-suppliers, because you need to be confident that they are not making you vulnerable. Of course, you can reduce this form filling by demonstrating your security posture with certifications. And again, David will discuss how specifically ISO 27001, its various bolt-ons, and ISO 22301, business continuity management, can help in that regard. Step four, share within your supply chain. If you're picking up alerts on your systems that could be attack traffic, then let the other people in your supply chain know what to look out for. If the worst has happened and you have been the victim of an attack, it's especially important to share at that point. After forensics and root cause analysis, details such as indicators of compromise, IOCs, are invaluable at protecting others in your supply chain. Reputationally, it can all be about how you recover from an attack, and understanding that attack is crucial. Step five, check the security forms many people admit to receiving the completed form. Checking the first couple of lines for the comforting words, and then just filing them away. And I'm not going to ask anyone to put their hand up on that one. A good way to check that your supplier is doing what they say they are is to complete a second-party audit on them. Make sure that you are satisfied that what your suppliers are telling you in the form is the reality. You could even involve them in your business continuity exercises to ensure you can count on each other to react the right way in a crisis. It is quite common to see a right to audit in supplier contracts, or indeed a requirement to hold certification, such as ISO 27001. Step 6 will not be new to anyone with a management system background. Continuous improvement. Understand how the threat landscape shifts and impacts you. Review your security requirements and evolve them. Communicate the changes and explore ways to uplift the security of your supply chain, adjusting the contracts with your suppliers to reflect this as required. And now, as promised, I'll hand over to David to see how those steps are translated into ISO and management system language. David, over to you.
Hi, thanks, James. Hi, everybody. So as James said, yes, I'm David Nutbrown, and I'm NQA's Principal Assessor for ISO 27001 and all things ISMS. So let me now show you how you can relate what James has just been speaking about to ISO 27001 and also its bolt-on standards. And hopefully I'll demonstrate how the family of these standards provide a great framework and can be used as a really useful and powerful tool when it comes to supply chain security. Now, you may be aware that both ISO 27001 2013 and 2022 contain supplier security specific controls. So the 2013 edition that has A15, so sat in Annex A there, and that's a 5 control section of Annex A. And 2022, the latest edition, we've got 3 specific organizational controls under A5, which specifically refer to suppliers and supplier relationships. However, that's not entirely the whole story when it comes to supplier security management, and there are wider controls. There are other clauses that we can use as well. So we click on to the next slide, please. Now, what I'm going to do is to break down my portion of this presentation and to follow through the plan, do, check, act model, which most of you will be very familiar with, and how PDCA can be applied along with the ISO 27000 family of standards to enhance supply chain security management. Next slide, please, James. Back one. Excellent, thanks. So firstly, a solid supplier relationships policy should really be in place, to set those rules that govern how we're to manage our supply chain. And from experience, I've learned that a risk-based approach to supply chain management is the very best way to go. So once your policy has been established, once it's been approved, what other tools does ISO 27001 and its associated standards give you? So the first tool that I, as an assessor, would expect to see used to its full extent, certainly when it comes to supplier management, is one which is quite often overlooked in this aspect, and it's actually your asset register. So in order to secure your supply chain, you must indeed fully understand what assets it are that you're trying to secure in the first place. What information assets do you hold? What information processing assets do you own? Where does your sensitive data reside? Who owns it? And what are those threats to it? So in order to secure your supply chain, as I say, we look at our assets first, but once we've established what our assets are, we can then move on to the next tool, the next weapon in our arsenal, and that is our security risk assessment. So this should be used to assess which of your suppliers have got access to your premises, your information, your applications, your systems, and your networks. And if completely effective, it should allow you to analyze your supply chain and to prioritize that supply chain based on where and how you're carrying the highest levels of risk. So James spoke earlier about supplier questionnaires, the dreaded supplier questionnaires, but this is the stage where they should be directly feeding into your process. You get those questionnaires, they feed into that risk assessment for each individual supplier. I see a lot of supplier risk assessments, and the very best ones are those which ultimately lead to a ranking of suppliers based on the risk posed to an organization, or risk that, that risk that an organization is carrying. And this method, it allows you to focus your efforts, to focus them where you're going to have the biggest impact, and to draw up your list of suppliers, which I think James mentioned earlier about being on that sort of the good list and not the naughty list. But there are also some really common pitfalls to avoid. And the biggest one here is looking at suppliers not entirely in a fully holistic manner. And what do I mean by that? A lot of organizations might risk assess their IT service provider, but on the flip side, they might miss out their cleaning company, their maintenance engineers, or even their security guard providers. It's always worth taking that step back and asking yourself, who's got out of hours access to my premises? Who's got that sort of unfettered access, when nobody else is around? Do any of our suppliers hold the keys to our premises? Can they get access when nobody else is there? In short, this shouldn't be all about the digital risk. I think sometimes we focus far too much on the cyber and the digital. We must also be asking ourselves at this point, what does the insider threat look like? And is there any threat posed to us by social engineering? So next slide, please. So now that we've got our risk assessments and we know based on actual facts where we're carrying the highest levels of risk, we can then begin to control those risks. And this is where we begin to apply the controls set out in Annex A. The obvious places to start are with supplier agreements, confidentiality agreements and NDAs, but also with access controls. And I'm going to focus for the next minute or so on access controls at this point. So as organizations, and James sort of mentioned this earlier, we are becoming ever more connected to our clients. And on the flip side, we're also becoming ever more connected to our customers. It's not out of the ordinary for us to invite externals onto our systems and for us ourselves to access those systems and networks of our customers as well. So this is why access controls and the application of permissions is particularly important. We all preach least privilege access, but do we truly practice it? So application of access control as a preventative measure should give you, as an organization, confidence that your external users are only able to access the information and the areas of your network that are absolutely necessary for them to be able to perform or carry out their specific roles or tasks. And our supplier agreements should state exactly what level of access is required and also why. I would suggest that our supplier agreements address what happens when employees leave supplier organizations or change role, and what mechanisms we have in place to ensure that access is revoked or changed if required in these circumstances. And that takes me nicely on to the next slide, please. So check. This is all about monitoring and reviewing. There are numerous metrics which can be monitored, which can be reviewed. The 2013 edition of 27001 talks specifically about supplier service delivery. But in order to get the best out of your management system, I would suggest that you also add access reviews into this sort of specific aspect as well. As an implementer, this is where I've often found the biggest organizational weaknesses to be. We're very quick to grant access to our systems and to our information. But when it comes to revoking that access, in my experience, that's where we have a real sort of area that's prone to weak controls, often with little to no review. So the questions at this point, that we should be asking ourselves should include: how will we be notified if an external user no longer requires access to our information? And can we remove or change access in a timely manner? On the flip side, this is a question we should be asking for when we have access to our own customer networks as well, is how do we inform those customers that an individual no longer needs the accesses that they do? Slide, please. And this takes us nicely onto ACT. In this instance, what we do with the results of our access reviews, and what, if any, remediations do we need to carry out in order to prevent the same issues occurring. So hopefully I've demonstrated here in the short time I've been speaking how using just Annex A8, Clause 6, A9 and A15 within ISO 27001 are all completely relevant when it comes to supply chain security. And this is just one of many threads that I chose to follow through today. The reality is that the framework set out in ISO 27001, its associated standards, provides us with many tools and many mechanisms to help you to secure that valuable supply chain. I'm now going to hand you back to James. Thank you very much for listening to this part of the presentation, and I'll be around to answer your questions shortly.
Yeah, thanks, David. That was great. Thank you. Certainly, it's something that we're hearing more and more from clients tell us that there is a lot more rigor coming at them when tendering for supply contracts nowadays. Page after page of the security questionnaires, internal audits, and in increasing numbers, a requirement that a company has ISO 27001 before even being allowed to bid for that work. This has been happening for suppliers of the NHS for some time now, but more government departments and private sector businesses are coming on board with that idea. Hence the growth we are seeing in ISO 27001 certification requests. Financial sectors are following, as they now have a regulatory requirement to include cyber response in their plans, and globally, the US are passing the laws that anyone involved in a health supply chain and financial sector supply chain must demonstrate robust cybersecurity practices with mandated requirements. Interesting times in response to the ever-growing threat landscape and the importance of the information we all deal with day to day. Anyway, thank you again for attending today, and anyone listening to the recording as well. Any questions? We'll have a quick look at the list that are already asked, but you have time to ask some more once I can work out how it works. So we'll have a look. David, have you seen any questions that you can answer at this point?
No, I've got nothing coming up in the chat at the moment.
Okay, I can see some now. So we've got a question here. Can you advise on the approximate cost and time frame for ISO 27001? Well, I'm going to show my full data background here and say it depends on size and complexity and things. So we'll pass that question over to the sales department to get back with an answer there. So we'll need a few more details, I think, but we'll be able to answer that question for you very, very shortly. Also, we've got someone here asking, saying that it sounds quiet, so hopefully, well, it's a bit late now for me to see it, but hopefully I can shout at the screen a bit more. Here we go. Let's see. David, I think this is one for you. I'll read it just in case you can still not see it.
Yeah, God, I can't see at the moment.
No worries. We are a small company in comparison to a lot of companies that have ISO 27001, which I have a risk and opportunity register, and our supplier management process is small and covered by our approved suppliers list within the risk control itself. Yep. For ISO 27001 2022, would it be worth having a separate supplier risk assessment register for all our approved suppliers?
I think it's definitely the way to go. But again, just bear in mind what I said there is not all suppliers are created equal. So I think doing that separate risk assessment should be able to identify those suppliers which you will need to focus energy on, and also some of those suppliers that maybe you can just sort of list as sort of priority 3 and almost sort of leave in the background where there's little to no risk as well. So as an exercise to bolster up your supplier security, definitely worth something worth considering. Yes.
Okay, thank you for that, David. We've got another question here that we'll have a crack at answering. And again, just a note that if there's any questions we miss or ones that we can't answer right now, we'll go for an answer on that one and we'll post the backup later. Right. So, am I right for the USA? They prefer SOC 2 and SOC 1. Are they now coming on board with ISO 27001? So, I think recently what we've seen is, and I sort of covered it a little bit there as well, in that sectors within the US are being mandated to do things. Now, SOC 1 and SOC 2 is historically a risk type management device from financial sectors. So within the financial sector, it's the sort of language they recognise. SOC 1 is the sort of processes around there. SOC 2 is the more sort of technical part. Now, in terms of how you would certify against that, it's the language that companies in that space understand. What we can do and what we are doing, and clients that we've spoken to do, they're showing the ISO standards that they have and how they apply in the language of SOC 2, and indeed how they surpass in some cases with the various bolt-ons, be it 27.7 for privacy or 27.17 and 18 for the cloud-based, or indeed the BCM standard. So to answer your question, yeah, the ISO is still recognised after that. It's just that the SOC is a more comfortable and known discussion point that the guys have there in the US. Okay, David, one for you. What's the transition period to the new version of the standard?
Okay, so it depends what we're talking about when we're with the transition period. So obviously the clock's now ticking and we need to transition prior to the 31st of October 2025. We will be finalising our own plans at NQA and we'll have them out in the very near future. However, what essentially it will look like for most clients is that we'll be looking to transition you hopefully at your next recertification. We can also offer surveillance as well if you are indeed ready, and it'll look like an extra 1 day bolted onto whatever that is, whether that's a surveillance, whether that is a recert. We'll bolt 1 day on to go through the whole of the requirements, the new requirements for 2022 as a transition audit.
Cool. Thank you, David. The next one, we can probably have a crack at answering it, the two of us, right? So what's your thoughts on the new standard and the improvements made? Well, talking of the new 2022, I think it aligns with some of the methodologies that certainly the larger companies have been working with for some time. I think it's going to encourage that sort of rigor and control further down the supply chain and into the smaller sort of businesses that are operating. I think it will really help drive maturity within the security space. I think it also gives you the ability to be flexible as well within the framework, and ultimately, and this is one of the things of 2013, if anyone's read it recently, it really was needing an update because a decade's long time in cyberspace, if you like. And I think 2022 specifically, what it does is introducing a way that allows you to grow and develop at the pace of the sort of threats and stuff you face. David, your thoughts on it?
Yeah, I think you're pretty much spot on there. If I could add anything, it would be not to sort of run away and sort of hide from the latest version of the standard. So 80% of the new controls most organizations have been implementing for many years as well. The standard has just sort of caught up, as James said there. You know, 9-10 years is an awful long time in the world of sort of digital progression and cybersecurity. So yeah, the new standard, absolutely, it calls out some new, more modern, more recognised techniques and practices within the security world, but also it actually goes firm on some of the things that probably should have been in the 2013 version of the standard as well. Certainly when we look at the likes of web filtering, monitoring, so it actually just sort of firms that up as actual requirements instead of as it was at the moment, more sort of implied requirements.
Cool. Thank you again, David, for that one. Paul, you've given us a question here. Can we say that this is identical for our customers? I'm not entirely sure of the context of that, so if you're still on and you want to just add a little bit more detail to help me out later on, we'll come back to you. If not, feel free to reach out separately on our sort of details. You'll be able to find us. No problem. We are quite active in all the normal sort of places. Plus, you'll be able to ask a question via NQA there anyway. So I'll move on. What are our thoughts, David, about the most appropriate certification? ISO 27001, Cyber Essentials with IASME, sort of thing. So I'll have, again, first crack at answering, and then David, if you have anything else to add, you can come in. Yeah, I think all these certificates do have a place. Cyber Essentials, it's very approachable, for instance, and a great baseline to get you started and developed from. I think it's sort of recognised that as you move towards the gold standard, you know, you're doing your Cyber Essentials Plus, but really to show that maturity, that that sort of robust security posture, that you've got the management system in place that allows you to deal with the security and everything around it and communicate it upwards to your board and give that confidence. ISO 27001 remains the sort of the top level sort of standard there, and something that we see lots of people working towards. And one of the questions mentioned size of company. Once you've started with Cyber Essentials and moving through, I mean, you don't have to start there, but once you've started, you're on that journey to get the 27001 and the various bolt-ons and things that go along with it. David, do you have anything else to help me answer that question?
No, I think the only thing that I'd add is that actually, you know, the majority of my clients have Cyber Essentials Plus, and they see 27001, they see ISO as the next sort of progressive step in the. So we almost see Cyber Essentials sort of feeding into that need eventually for the international standard as well. That's really all I've got on that topic.
Brilliant, thank you, David. Sean's back again with a question asked, or I think statement more so, saying e-commerce clients are asking for it also. Yeah, that's probably true, and it's around, you know, just because they'll be hearing it within the certain things that they have to. I assume you're meaning, Sean, here again, SOC 1 and 2. And certainly for anyone that's looked into it, it can be quite expensive to gain a SOC 2 certificate. That might mean that, you know, it would be a while before you could do a lot with, you know, contractually. But again, I think, you know, we are seeing these, but we're being really good at explaining how ISO gives the confidence, and indeed in many cases goes past that of which SOC 2 look at as well. But yeah, we are getting more and more questions asked around the SOC 2 thing. Right, so Gary's got a question here. How do you distinguish the severity of the risk dependent on the industry it is applied to? For example, software producers are more reactive compared to the construction industry. David, what do you think on that one?
Oh, just say the question again for me, please.
Yeah, no worries. So how do you distinguish the severity of the risk dependent on the industry it's applied to? I.e., software producers are more reactive compared to the construction industry. I mean, for me,
Yeah, go on.
Yeah, I was just going to say, for me, this is about, doing that work and understanding your risk. So it's your likelihood, your severity, and then from there you're scoring that across your matrix. I think maybe that, Gary, might be the answer you're looking for, because obviously it's specific, to your context at that point. But David, is there anything else you'd like to add on that one?
Yeah, I think the big thing here to do is to actually quantify those risk levels. So to set out and to know what we say we have our impact on our risks of 1 to 5, but actually what does each of those scoring mechanisms mean to us and to our industry? I think if you get that and you quantify those various risk levels, then you go a long way to answering that question. But there is, I said, there's an awful lot of dependencies, and there's an awful lot of moving parts in there as well.
Excellent. Thank you for that, David. Hopefully that answers the question there. The next one we've got now, this one, David's for you as well. I think it's an interesting question that we do hear a lot of, and I think I know what your answer is going to be already, but let's not spoil that fun. So from Alessandro, which are the sections in 27,001/2022 that could be declared and justified as non-applicable?
Oh, ouch. I think actually the way the 2022 version of the standard is written now is that you're going to need an absolutely robust justification to exclude anything. The one we're probably going to see the most of is those physical controls. We are seeing an awful lot now of more sort of remote-only organisations, but
I mean, for me, I think the answer is, the answer is kind of simple there. It's like any of those Annex A type controls in that, any can be excluded if it's a justifiable reason within your business context to do so. So for instance, if you aren't doing some of the design and stuff work, then you could still remove those. As David mentioned, there's a lot of just rewording and things and renumbering of the various controls in there. But ultimately, there is no difference in terms of 2013 to 2022 in what you can declare to be and justified as non-applicable.
Exactly. That mechanism is exactly the same, and it's through your statements of applicability, is to go through, and if you feel justifiably that you can exclude the control, then go for it. I mean, as things stand at the moment, we see a lot of Annex A14 controls excluded unless we're dealing specifically with teams that do develop in-house or outsource. And then, as I say, the trend at the moment as well is to sort of exclude those physical controls too. But certainly the mechanism is the same. I suppose the real answer, as James said, is, with his data and privacy hat on it, is it depends. It depends on you. It depends on you as an organisation.
Yeah, cool. Thank you. Taking my catchphrase there, David. Anyway, so next statement here is from John, one of our business development managers. Glad that he's not asking a hard question of us here, David, but he's actually just saying that he'll be more than happy to schedule a call to discuss any requirements and quote, off the back of that as well. So if anybody does want to reach out, portals on the website, it's very easy to get a contact, and either John or somebody else from that area will be able to have a chat and get you sorted out with whatever you need. Okay, we've got one here, and I haven't read it in advance, so I don't know whether it's one for you or not, David, but let's have a try. Recertification is due May this year, so I would need to have a further transition audit then. So
say that again. I think I've got the answer. Just state it again so I can get the mechanics in my head.
Cool. So Neil says that his recertification, for 27,001, I'm assuming, is due in May this year, and he's asking whether he would need a further transition audit at that point. I think, and maybe Neil, if you're still on, if you want to tell us, do you think you'd be ready in May with the new version of the standard? Have you had a chance to have a look at that one at the moment, or not? And I'll pass over to David here as well to just go over how we can cover transition. Go on, David.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's no difference of sort of what I said earlier. We are hoping to be in a position to be offering transitions by that stage. But obviously, this is not me guaranteeing it right now. And John, if you do feel that you are ready, then absolutely it would just be exactly as I said before, that one further transition day to transition you across. But our back office will be in touch with you, and your lead auditor as well will be in touch with you to gauge where you are in your journey, how ready you are, and if you feel that you're not quite ready at the moment, we can absolutely push you into 2024. And even, you're May, aren't you? Up to surveillance 2. So you're in quite a fortunate position. Time-wise, you're perfect to be able to hit it at any one of those upcoming audits. I would always encourage you to go early, but absolutely, let's make sure that you're in a decent position before we attempt it.
Yeah, it's always easier when there's evidence to back up what's in the policies and things, and having the time to do that is key for it. So yeah, thank you for your question. Anyway, we've got another question in here, David, and I think we can probably cover it off quite simply. Have NQA started to audit the 2022 standard for certification? Simply put, just now, the job as part of the transition, from launch, as we saw in October, is getting all our training, all our auditors ready, which we've done. So they're raring to go. They're champing at the bit. They're ready to do 2022. And then we've got to submit at the first tranche of submissions with UCAS to accredit us to say that we can go out there and do 2022, because UCAS are the sort of overseers in that sort of sense. So they have to be happy that we are ready and that we've got competent auditors, which we are certainly happy that we have some really good auditors, plenty of them, ready to go.
Yeah, so plenty of them.
So David, anything to add there?
No, you've absolutely nailed that. That gives an absolute full sort of explanation of where we are at the moment. So it's a case of just watch this space and wait for the announcement, I suppose.
Yeah, cool. So Sean's got back on here. He's saying 35,000 a year, which is either Sean's yearly bonus that he gets, or he's telling me that that's what SOC 2 costs, which I think from memory, yeah, depending on the size, it can be quite pricey and be enough to make you balk a bit at the number. Certainly, because we've seen a few of those, but again, and I think maybe that's something, David, we can write down for our next webinar, is to discuss what to sort of line up 27 and the various bolt-ons against SOC 2, so you can have that easy discussion, Sean, and be a bit more financially prudent, shall we say, with how you cover up, or how you cover some of those security questions that you see from contractually at the moment. So thanks again for that number. Yeah, it can be eye-watering at times. I've seen bigger than that too. But yeah, cool. Thank you, Sean. Okay, David, I think we've got a question for you around about risk assessments from your bit. I'm just looking at the time. I think we've still got time to answer. Is a good summary to treat suppliers as information assets and run the same processes against them, like recording them in the asset inventory, running risk assessments, etc.?
It's a novel approach, but actually it makes perfect sense, yes. Because ultimately, so substitute asset for supplier, then actually, yes, you are just running the exact same process. So in short, absolutely, yes, if you treat it that way, you're going to go through every step that you're required to do so.
You're really going to cover it down there. I think what the bit for me, the bit I like is and it could just be naming convention at this point, Harry, is the whole trusted supplier list and the risks involved with that. If you get your scoring right on that one, you're pretty much going to cover all those things like you've said there. So definitely, we wouldn't come along and say, oh, you've done it like that. We're not, we don't like that or whatever. If you're showing that you're putting that rigor in and you're really happy with your sort of risk assessment on your suppliers, spot on. So yeah, cool. Anything else, David, before we move to see if we've got some more questions here?
No, absolutely. That's I'm good so far.
So, I think this is in response to one from before. Neil saying he wouldn't be ready in May, but obviously next research will be after October 25. So Neil, the best thing we can do there is have a chat with us when you're ready to go. We can add that extra day of transition, and that's a mandatory day, by the way. We have to do that mandatory time for transition. We could add that on at one of the surveillance audits. So in May, what year are we? 23. In May 2024, you could be ready to go. Or, you know, if it was really something you're desperate for, we can organise one of those sort of separate visits. But really, it's way better looking to do it when we're already on site there. So, like a surveillance in 24 would be the time. And you're right to point out that once you go past October 25, there wouldn't be a 2013 recognised anymore. So, yeah, spot on in that. Thank you, Neil. Hopefully that helps you out a bit. Again, get in contact if there's any other questions or anything. If you want to have a chat one-to-one, that's not a problem. Okay, what's another question from Alessandro, a different one, I think. So, what's the mechanics by a certification program point of view to have added to 27001 also 277, which is privacy, and 27017, so the cloud security bolt-ons? David, if you want to cover that.
Yeah, so essentially
Exactly.
as James said, they are bolt-ons. So just first and foremost, just approach us and we can do the calculations on time, etc. But we would essentially run a full 27001 audit, depending on where you are in your cycle, to plan, and then add either the cloud or the privacy as a bolt-on to the side. Now, the bolt-on is not a fully certified piece, which I think, James, you're bigger on the PIM side, aren't you? But essentially, yeah, it's just run alongside as a bolt-on and adds on to your 27001.
Yeah, so just to cover that a wee bit more, Alessandro, you've got your 27701, you're familiar with the format. 27001 is a case of it just adds a few more controls, it mentions a few extra things, and away you go. Again, we can talk about that when there is material on our site as well that shows you or helps sort of guide alongside how we can do that, and it's something that we can look to support in the future. But yeah, a bit more of what we do in 27 you're doing with a specific sort of privacy focus, and with the cloud one it adds some things in there. There's a couple of different bits in the clauses and a couple of different bits in the add or new controls added in the Annex A as well. So yeah, it's a very similar sort of process, one that wouldn't be uncomfortable for you. You recognise it, sort of thing, and we go from there. So next question then, let's have a look. So yeah, Neil's just said probably look for next year. Bob on, we'll be in contact then, and we'll add that extra day on, Neil, as and when. No worries, and we'll be out to you. Thank you very much. Next one here, Tim Pinnell, and for anyone who doesn't know, that was I'm the new Tim, if you like, when Tim moved over here at NQA. He's sort of away somewhere else, and he had previously stated that NQA would be ready for our transition to the 27000 2022 by April. We are fully ready and have been operating to the 2022 version since December. Grant, that's brilliant, right? That's good to hear. Now, I've maybe already answered this one, but we'll go again anyway. So yeah, in answer to the question, our auditors are trained, they're ready to go. We're just sort of waiting for that accreditation, and we are in the first tranche of from UCAS there. So once they've looked over all our documents and said we're happy with what you with everything there, that you understand the new standard, that your people are trained and competent, they'll give us the green light, and everyone else at exactly the same time in that tranche will be able to go and audit for 2022. But it's great news that you're ready, and as soon as we can, we'll be able to come and have a look at that for you, Grant, and make you and get you a new shiny certificate with 2022 on it. Any other questions, just let me know. Right?
And that's it. If I can add to that as well, Grant, I mean, basically everything that's within our control, we've done. We are at the point of let's say, being ready to go for accreditation. So again, as soon as we're ready to go, you will know. Look out for announcements as well, and sort of stand by your phone for our operations team being in touch.
Cool, thank you. And we're on to the last question here. So, if anyone has any other questions, get typing, because we'll be moving off this section soon and closing up. But in from Anthony, we've got one. ISO 27701 is being revised to align with ISO 27001:2022. I think maybe that could maybe be a question. Is it being revised? Because there is nothing certainly that we've heard officially that they're revising it. But my view would be on that we could pragmatically see where it's saying, so in the bits in 27.7 where it refers to 27001 to a particular clause, we would obviously be able to map that over to the new one. Anthony's telling me it has actually been issued, so that is indeed good news, and it was a question that we had on there, and it'll be those tiny wee sort of adjustments that will be, instead of going to clause 5 whatever, it'll map it nicely across, which is great, and certainly something that will be valuable to our auditors, but it certainly wouldn't have slowed us down in being able to provide that. But thank you for the information, Anthony. And if there are no other questions, we shall move on a bit, and there isn't, so we'll go. And just thank you for all those questions. And we'll publish a blog around today's content soon on the website, and attempt to answer all your questions on there too, just so you've got that one, or indeed you have plenty of time, or if you're listening on catch up, just to ask some questions, and we'll add those into. Just very quickly though, before you go, a quick reminder on training, and the hottest ticket right now is our 2022 transition training. The slots, as soon as they're announced, they're always filling up fast, so have a look on there. The training is a great way to demonstrate the competence of your internal auditors to the updated standard, and obviously don't forget that all existing clients do get that discount on any training that they require, that they have with us. The next slide is also any link to other help or information that we provide and how to contact us. And with that, I'll maybe leave that for a bit longer, but with that, you're going to get, looks like 7 or 5 minutes back in the diary on a Friday to go and set yourself up for a nice leisurely lunch, etc. And we'll go from there. So once again, from David and I, thank you very much for joining and for your attention, and for the great questions to all those that took the time to type. Really appreciate that. It really brings the session to life, so thank you. And we'll see you all again soon with hopefully some other interesting content. So see you later. Bye.
Cool. Thanks, everyone.